is old will be new. What is old will be new, and what is new will be made holy. What is old will be new. What is old will be new, and what is new will be made holy. What is old will be new. What is old will be new, and what is new will be made holy. What is old will be new. What is old will be new, and what is new will be made holy. What is old will be made holy. What is new will be made holy.
Shalom, hi everybody. This is Shawn here, Rabbi Shawn Zevit here in Philadelphia, preparing for Pesach, for Passover this year with my wife, Rabbi Simcha, just the two of us here. And while we'll be connecting with family in Cleveland and in Canada later on, we both recognize the sweetness of being able to be here together and feeling a sense of connection, staying safe and lovingly connected with others, and some of the sadness too, and the weight in our heart of not being able to be physically present, and knowing some people are able to access technology and others are not, that some people are trapped in prisons, predominantly in our own city. The majority of those are people of color, and that we're working hard for that release and liberation, as well as to find ways of connecting this Pesach with each other. So there's plenty of stuff out there, and just thought I would record a few pearls of Pesach that have been inspiring to me, and some music that I and others have. We began with "What is old will be new," the words of Rav Avraham Yitzchak Kook, the first chief rabbi of Israel, and that melody was written by my soul brother, Yosef August, with whom I and others helped start the Jewish men's retreats, now Mensch work, close to 28 years ago. And Yosef wrote that, I think, around 1988, when Reb Zalman asked him to write some music to that phrase of Rav Kook. So it felt very appropriate right now, because here we are about to enter this experience from the Torah, one of the most scripted rituals, including dialogue, that we're to invited and asked to offer each night and gather this way, that we have been doing for millennia now. And so on one hand, there is that old, that connecting to the ancient, back to the original movement towards Cherut, that sense of liberation and unburdening of our souls, not just freedom, but as the sages said, Zman Cherutenu, the time of release and an unburdening that can be internal narrowness and oppression that we're carrying, or our external circumstances. So what is old will be new, and here we are, asking Manishtana, what's new about this Passover, is the question almost not need be asked, because the whole experience in and of itself is so radically new for us. Of course, as a people, we've had these new moments. The first Passover, the leaving Mitzrayim, leaving the place of narrows of Egypt, the first Passover being celebrated after the journey of the desert for many years, or the first one when the temple was built and then destroyed, and then the new temple, second temple, was rebuilt, or the first Passover on the ashes of the second temple, 70 of the common era. What could that have possibly been like to gather together in the midst of such destruction and different uh, uh, um, moments of persecution and loss and journeying and hopefulness and finding a new home throughout so many centuries, and eventually here for my great grandparents and grandparents arriving initially in Canada and the United States, and here we are today. So on one hand, we're in this current pandemic in very unique human terms across all peoples and faiths and even species faced with this challenge. It's very different than before. And we can also draw on the fact that something is radically new, and as Kohelet, Ecclesiastes also say, and at the same time, things under the sun have been going on since the Big Bang and the emergence of creation here on this beautiful, precious planet, rotating the sun, spiraling through space at tens of thousands of miles per hour. And yet here we are with gravitas, with weight and substance here on this planet gathering with a bit of an illusion of stability, right? Because we're always spiraling in space to begin with, whether it's 24 hours or the speed at which our planet is rotating and traveling. And yet we have that sense of being able to ground and connect with each other. So I want to share some of the words of friend and colleague, Rabbi Brant Rosen, who wrote for this particular Passover, and he's the rabbi at Tzedek, Chicago, Seder readings for 5780. And he says, quoting the psalmist, Mina Meitzar Karatiya, from the narrow place I called out to you, source of all life. Before we raise the cup to another Passover, we must acknowledge that this night is very different from all other nights. In this extraordinary moment of global pandemic, we are literally dwelling in the narrow place of social separation. Thus, when we come to the first question of the evening, how on earth do we fulfill the mitzvah and the Passover Seder? Where do we even begin? Well, let's begin here. Now more than ever, we must affirm Passover's teaching that liberation is not only possible, but inevitable. We know from nature that spring will invariably follow winter. We know from history that the oppressed do not remain oppressed forever. So too we know in our hearts and minds that one day we will eventually make it through this narrow place and emerge into wide, open spaces. But we also learn from our story, the emergence never happens easily. It cannot happen without real struggle and hard work. We know there already are and will be casualties. It is dramatically higher and rising even as we gather tonight. And while we know that a new world is waiting for us, we don't yet know how many of us will make it there or what the world will actually look like when we arrive. It reminds me of that phrase from the Torah when Pharaoh says to Moshe, well, okay, so you want to be free, you want to go serve your God. Well, what are you actually intending on doing? And Moshe says, Anachnu lo neda ech la'avod et Yah ad shebo'enu shama. We won't know exactly how to be of best service until we get into that place, until we actually find that place of service. So here we are figuring it all out together. Okay. And Brant goes on to say, for now, however, we do know this. Like our ancestors, we will not make it through without each other. So too, if the current pandemic has taught us anything, it is the lesson we learned so painfully by our ancestors in our story, that we are all in this together. Or as Reb Zalman would say, the only way to get it together is together. That my liberation is irrevocably bound up with yours, and that in the midst of the narrow place, there is no other way but forward. So as we begin this Passover, blessed is the one who shows us how to stand together. Blessed is the one who inspires us to show up for one another. Blessed is the one who leads us all towards the wide open spaces of a new day. So one of the things we, um, many of us have been working on is both how to acknowledge the challenge as well as the possibility of this moment. And I don't know about you, but I've been feeling immense amount of both. I've been in narrow places that I thought were long past, that even my spiritual practices of prayer and meditation, um, just random acts of loving kindness or checking in with someone if I am, well, in prior days, going to pick up a prescription or the grocery store and just thinking, well, who's nearby who I could get something and drop it on their porch, or whatever it may be. That's nothing has acted as a bypass over feelings also of collective and individual grief, of not being able to be with my family and community in the usual ways. Um, and so I just want to acknowledge that as well, and know that some of us don't have the technology to connect at this time. Some of us have it, but we're still alone, or we found ourselves in traveling and in circumstances we didn't anticipate. So there's a lot of challenges at this moment in time. But I also want to quote from Rabbi Akiva, who interpreted the phrase again in Shmot in Exodus, where it says, "You will take it, the Paschal offering, for yourself and your family and anyone who's passing by, the stranger really meaning, the other people in your community." And Akiba says that taking it means even if you are on your own. And the sages, discuss that if you're on your own for a Seder, you don't have access, say tonight, with technology, that it's still incumbent upon you, and you can ask yourself the 4 questions and use it that way, and that's just as legitimate. And you, by tapping, even if you're with a group, then still tapping individually into saying, where am I now? What is my contribution? What's my state of being now? That you are actually connecting with the collective that way, as opposed to um, uh, just doing a group think and not asking yourself the questions that Passover invite us to ask. So I wanted to put that out there for some of you who are not able to be with others for whatever reason this moment in time, or you may be ill. Simcha, Rabbi Simcha, my wife, is doing such an amazing job. She's been working day and night to help people at the hospital where she's a chaplain, make sure they get access to Seder plates and Passover food because their loved ones can't be with them at this time. So I want to acknowledge that as well. And also, Ki Le'olam Chasto, that if we access places of loving kindness, virtually or with each other, especially with ourselves, if you have a partner or children at home, your pets, that those small acts of loving kindness, of chesed, are so profound right now. And I know have touched me when people have just thought about me and said, hey, I've got some extra parsley, or, how are you doing there? Not making those assumptions, waving at people, when you're going for socially appropriate a space between you, but, even 20 or 30 feet across the street, and, and saying hi, and lifting our heads, and lifting our heads to find the divine spark staring right back at us across the street or across the neighborhood. So Ki Le'olam Chasto, I just need to cue it up for a moment here. So the piece I'm going to share now, Ki Le'olam Chasto, Psalm, from the Psalms. The melody is the one I got from my grandparents, Zeta Aaron and Barbara Rose, and it was recorded with Rabbi Jeff Eisenstadt, and I interpreted the English in the contemporary way. So here we go. Let's take a moment, and as this is playing, think for yourself, what's an act of loving kindness you can do for yourself, for somebody else? Just reflect on the way you are and what will help you shift from being in the narrows. And by that, I mean, it may be to be with the grief you feel right now, or sense of dislocation, not to push it away, but whether it's that or whether it's allowing the joy allowing yourself to be joyful and sing and dance right now, that's okay too. Here we go. Sorry there.
Ondula dona ki tov, ki leolam chasto. Praise you, source of goodness, your love is everlasting. Ondula Elohim, ki leolam chasto. The many and the one, your love is everlasting. Ondula done adonim, Kile olam chasto, the power of the power, your love is everlasting. Loseni flot gadol davado, Kile olam chasto, all our wondrous actions, your love is everlasting. Losei Shemaim bitfuna, Kile olam chasto, presence of the universe, your love is everlasting. Baruch haaretz alamayim, Kile olam chasto, earth and the waters, your love is everlasting. Rosei oren gedolim, Kile olam chasto, wind and the fire, your love is everlasting. Et hashemesh lememshelet bayom, Kile olam chasto, sunlight to shadow the day, your love is everlasting. Et hayereh v'kochavim lememshelet balayla, Kile olam chasto, moon and stars in the night, your love is everlasting. Shebeshivlenu zachar lanu, Kile olam chasto, in our heartbreak we remember, your love is everlasting. Yifrakenu mitzarenu, Kile olam chasto, shattering our narrowness, your love is everlasting. Noten lechem lecho basar, Kile olam chasto, sustenance for all beings, your love is everlasting. Hodu le'el hashamayim, Kile olam chasto, praise to heaven and earth, your love is
Welcome back. Kile olam chasto, love is everlasting. So we get to this moment, and part of the leave-taking of Mitzrayim, of course, comes through the earth rebelling against the way we're being, which we're experiencing some of today, of course, through climate shifts, climate displacement, and of course exacerbated through climate injustice, where our socioeconomic and political and social structures are actually oppressive to other people within our own societies, and in the world, the disparity of resources as well, so that some people and countries are suffering more because of climate change than others. And so just naming that as we think of these 10 signs and wonders. It's important, I think, to note that the Torah doesn't say plagues, but sort of talks about things that are awesome, which is like wonderment and fear combined, and are like wow or whoa, made to wake us up and not to continue in the same ways that we have been before, in order to be freer, whether we're in one place or seeking to get out of oppressive situations into another. So there's this, actually, before I shared this poem by Trish Arlen, there's this moment where in the Seder, where we open the door and we invite all people in need who are in. And, you can read that as a line, a nice, anecdote or nostalgic piece. Many of us, especially in the virtual world now, are inviting many more people in who we know or don't know as well, or who needs a place at the Seder, and trying to accommodate that. It's meant to, invite anyone who's in need for our day, whether they're Jewish or not, seeking or not. No theological test is required. Of course, for those who've come before us, that opening of the door also had some risk attached to it. The vulnerability of opening up to society where we may or may not be welcome. And I really wanted to appreciate that replacing, and we've done this in our family, the historic lines that got written in the face of crusades and various persecutions, inviting the divine to protect us and to zap the other. There's a passage that was brought to light for me by Noam Sion and David Dishon that said to first have appeared in 1521 in the Ashkenazi Haggadah from Worms. This may have been due to the fact that there was known to have been close contact at that time between Jewish and Christian mystics and a sharing of mystical traditions. And this replaces that traditional paragraph with Shvoch ahavtecha al hagoyim asher yida'ucha va'al mamlachut asher b'shimcha korim. Pour out your love on all the peoples that of this world and on all the nations that call your name, for the loving kindness that we do together in the face of all the challenges that would take us down. May we be privileged to see the sukkah of peace spread for all, and rejoice in the joy of all your peoples. So I want to offer that piece, here as we open the door to each other, and and in that crossing over, of course, the signs and wonders that shattered the societal structures that had preceded them in Egypt. And similarly today, many of us sit and acknowledge we don't know how long this situation will go, and it's already transformed and is shattering much of society that we've had. There's still a disparity where some people are unfortunately hoarding or manipulating the market, and others are being left with nothing. And at the same time, people are really reaching out and helping each other and already building new structures so that when this plague is lifted, or this challenge, I want to say, I'm not Rabbi Yael Levy, I appreciate, inspired by her teaching that this isn't an 11th plague. It's not an added thing. This is the challenge that we're facing now. And it has a lot of roots in our interaction with other species and the way we're structuring our world right now, so that shattering will mean require new systems and a way of being in this planet for the better, I pray. So there's a midrash, a story about the crossing of the sea, where Pharaoh's armies are drowned when the current comes back in, and the walls of water are portrayed as collapsing around them, that the angels wanted to sing, and that the rabbis give God a little speech there in the midrash and say, God silences the angels and says, please don't, you cannot sing while my creatures are dying, horses and Egyptian soldiers in that case. And so that idea that taking a drop of wine during the 10 challenges, so that we diminish wine, which is the sweetness in our joy. And I remember my great-grandfather, Ben Shawn Zevit, dressed in his kittel and his white robe that he would later be buried with, and this is in Winnipeg, where I grew up in the 1960s, and he was still leading the Seder at my grandparents' place. The other night was at my great-grandparents, Saul and Gittel. So I had the blessing of knowing the three of them growing up as a child. And Zeta Bensi would take what is one of the moments that still is seared in my memory, that he would reach for that cup of wine in very thick figures and very intentionally stop and take it out and then put it on the plate and pause. And I could just feel his ouch with each one of them. It wasn't just, oh, here's where we do that wine dropping thing, but that he was experiencing the diminishment of joy in the face of some of the suffering that was part of the process of our liberation. So contemporary Jewish writer Trish Arlen writes in this prayer that she had wrote, poem prayer, actually April 22nd, 2016, which she's reposted recently. Plagues are not cute. Plagues are not finger puppets, are not soft and furry stuffed toys, don't have googly eyes. Plagues are not cute. They are not targeted attacks. They do not show up in a court of law and are not fair. Plagues are not a bland topic for mild discussion and do not call for objectivity. No, plagues are disaster without explanation. Acts of desperation. They attack everyone, hurt the poor more than the rich. Plagues kill the innocent as well as the guilty. Plagues are not cute or fair or interesting. So I drop wine onto my plate to remember all who suffered, Hebrew and Egyptian. I drop wine onto my plate for the desperate acts that often come with freedom struggles. I drop wine onto my plate so that I will not forget that plagues are not cute. So saying that, I don't want at all diminish all the interactive exercises and creativity people are coming up with, especially for our children to engage with them. But I just wanted to name that. And the one thing I have from the generations of my family here is actually some of those drops that found their way as those drops are being diminished from my great grandfather and then my grandparents onto this covering here, in which the Chag HaMatzot, the three different matzahs were inserted as part of the beginning of the Seder. And so I just wanted to keep that one close to us as we now share music that I wrote for these 10 signs and impacts, and also includes a more contemporary phrase, none of us are free until all of us are free. So may we continue working towards that, and thank my Shabbat Unplugged brothers and sisters, Rabbis Micah Becker-Klein and Margot Stein, Rachel Raphael, Miriam Klotz, and Juliet Spitzer joining me in this one as well.
Dam Svadea, Kini Maro, Der beschrien Barat, Aber Choshech Makat Bechorot. Dam Svadea, Kini Maro, Der beschrien Barat, Aber Choshech Makat Bechorot. Whoa, none of us is free till everyone is free. None of us is free till everyone is free. None of us is free till everyone is free. None of us is free till everyone is free.
Atzaveyem kesef